Hey everyone, today I get to talk about the Framework 16. I'm incredibly excited because I just bought the Framework 16 as my personal laptop and I got all these different configurations and I'm going to show you all those configurations. We're going to jump right into it. But before I do, I just want to explain what this laptop is for those of you who may not be familiar. So Framework is a company that is trying to eliminate e-waste by designing these laptops that are super repairable. And so I just got the Framework 16 and I just got the DIY edition. And you can see here a little bit in this GIF or video that the Framework 16 is completely modular and completely repairable. And that is sort of the ethos of Framework themselves. They're trying again to eliminate e-waste by designing these computers. I love their mission and I love their computers. And look at this. Here's a little GIF of them putting together a computer. And I'm going to show you all the different modules that I got and the ways that I've been putting it together. Then I'm going to be doing an unboxing so you can actually see all of the things that I got in one piece. Then I'll be putting the laptop together because there's lots of stuff that you have to do to build the laptop. Well, to be fair, there's not that much you have to do, which makes it even more fun. And then I'll just really quickly show how to put together some of those different configurations. I hope you all really liked the video. If you do, please like and subscribe. And let's jump into it. I'm going to start by showing off a bunch of these awesome configurations. All right, configuration one, we've got the RGB keyboard in the center with black spacers on the left and the right hand side. And the trackpad is also center aligned. And I love this configuration. It's very stealth looking and sort of similar to other gaming laptops, kind of a standard configuration. But you can make it pop with this new configuration, number two, with the color shifters on the left and the right side. So now instead of the black spacers, these are color shift spacers, and they reflect light in a really neat way. So the only difference about this configuration are those spacers, but look how much more this specific configuration pops. I love this configuration. It'll probably be my go-to for when I travel. I think it looks really, really nice. You can do the same thing, same setup with the same pieces, but you can just kind of stack them to the left. So configuration 3 here is the two color shift spacers on the left hand side, the keyboard on the right hand side, and the trackpad also aligned to the right hand side. So if you want to move things around, you totally can. Now, let's say you want to use a numpad, that's no problem. So just take out the spacers and look at this configuration. We've got the numpad on the left, keyboard center to the right, trackpad center to the right, and it just looks really awesome. Like normally numpads are on the right, you can totally do that too, right? You could flip this around if you wanted. So for example, imagine this now RGB macro pad. Imagine that were the numpad, but I wanted to show you a whole other configuration. I love the macro pad. Those colors pop so much. The RGBs look great, and you could put the numpad there instead as well. And that's just a really good way to get more buttons for you for keyboard shortcuts. However you like to go about your workflows. I like using macro pads in general, so this kind of helps me configure things, and I'll definitely be using this configuration a lot. It looks awesome as well. Now, this one I sped up because I spent so much time with this configuration. What you're seeing here are two LED matrix spacers on the left-hand side. So on the left-hand side, I've got these LED matrix spacers, and there's this web application that actually controls the hardware here that lets me change them. So here you can see I was playing around a lot with the different configurations, and I was just blown away with what you can do. What's really cool is there's also APIs for this, so you can actually go and program whatever you want really to show up on these LED matrix spacers. I was really, really impressed with this configuration. I really like it, and I'll definitely have a lot of fun with these. So I anticipate trying to have a little hobby project to maybe make Lakers scores or NBA scores, something show up on these LED matrix spacers. They're really, really cool. And again, in this configuration, I'm stacking them to the left. You could go ahead and stack them to the right, or what you'll see in a bit, in a couple of clips, is them stacked to the left and right, so on the left and the right of the keyboard. I did want to really quickly show there's actually a Windows GUI app that you can get from their GitHub repo. They've got an open source repo to help you control these spacers, and you can do things like write text. So here you're saying text high, it's coming down, flashing down the screen, but you can do a lot of different things. You can track the speed of the animations, etc. In this configuration, you're seeing the left and the right hand side now with the spacers. So this looked like the first few configurations I showed, but now I've just got the LED matrix spacers on either side. And this one is really cool. This might also have to be a go-to. They're all go-tos is the problem. It's all just so neat and awesome. So those are some configurations that I'm able to do with the modules that I got. Again, it's really easy to put them together. What I want to show you next is me unboxing all of these different pieces, and then I'll actually show you how I put the internals of the computer together, and then I'll show you some of this action here of me playing around and switching up the configurations. All right, so first let's start with me going through all the things that came in the box, which is really exciting.
First things first, you see this framework pamphlet. There's a bunch of stuff in here, stickers and such. I'm just gonna go ahead and put it to the side, look at it later. I think there's a poster in there, but I'm really excited about the stuff, the hardware itself. And so here I've got a keyboard. We'll take a closer look at the keyboard and how that's configured in a bit. Underneath that, it looks like we got the numpad and the macropad, RGB macropad. So I got a bunch of different ways to configure the computer, and I'll show all the different ways. I'm very, very excited about it. But these are two different ways to do that. I got the numpad, RGB macropad, and I've also got these different spacers. So I've got, I think I got more spacers than this, but right now I'm seeing 4 different spacers. These look like they are black and color shift, so we'll see exactly what those look like in a bit. And then I've also got the bezel, which goes around the display itself. You'll also notice at the bottom all these different little boxes. These are the different I/O that you can basically put onto the computer. It's configurable, which is so incredible. And so I've got an Ethernet, I've got a display port, I've got some USB-As, etc., USB-Cs, SDs, audio, all that good stuff. Again, I'll show all the different configurations at some point, but for now, let me just throw this back in here all together, nice and neat. And I'm gonna take this and put it off to the side as well. And here it is, wow. It's got these different QR codes to help you get started, which is great. I don't have any pre-configured anything on here, so I'll have to do a manual Windows install, which is what I'm planning to run here, Windows 11. And the first thing is, holy crap, it's very heavy. Something I probably get used to, but I've never experienced a laptop being this heavy. But here it is, the laptop in all its glory. Again, we'll take it out, show you more about that in a second. I'm gonna put that down to the side as well. Careful, precious. Okay, and then underneath that, what else do we have? Amazing, okay. So you'll notice this expansion bay shell. I'll go into more details on what this is later. I'll unbox it as well. But essentially the laptop itself, I got a discrete graphics card that's baked into, it looks like, the laptop already. But if I didn't want as big, chunky graphics card, maybe some of the weight's coming from that graphics card, I could go ahead and exchange it with this bay shell, which basically has some fans for cooling, which is cool because this means it's modular in the future, should I so decide I want to change things. I'm also very excited about this. I'm gonna have 64 gig RAM, which is amazing. DDR5, 64 gig, very exciting. And then what else do we got in here? Nice, okay. So I did have more spacers. I told you I went crazy. I'm really excited to show all the different options. Here I've got LED matrix spacer, 2 of them, so we can play around with those. We'll see what those look like. And then I've also got my storage. So this is 500 gigabytes NVMe, 500 gig secondary storage is what it's gonna be for me. And I've also got a primary storage here, which is 2 gigabytes, same thing, NVMe. So we'll throw those in to the computer when we get there, which is very, very exciting. And then we've also got the charger. So the charger, there's also a brick. I'm not gonna unbox it here in this angle. We'll change it up. But essentially it supplies 180 watt brick. Nothing too special there. All right, cool. So that is the first me unboxing it, which is really exciting. Takeaways are, there's a ton of awesome stuff in here. I cannot wait to tinker. If you're a tinkerer, super, super exciting. It is really heavy. That's the one thing that I'm only concern I have so far is it is very heavy. But let's jump into it and let's start putting it together.
Look at that. We've got 64 gig RAM, keyboard, bezel, numpad, RGB, spacers, SSDs, LED matrix, I/O, the whole shebang all on the table all at once. All right, let's get into it. Let's start putting this laptop together, put all the pieces together. First step, right? Unwrapping the stuff that's surrounding the laptop. Speed through that so you don't have to watch me struggle there. And then as soon as it comes out, you pretty immediately see that awesome modularity, right? So the top, you have that graphics card that plugs in and out. On the left-hand side, you have 3 I/O. On the right-hand side, you have 3 I/O. And kind of flipping it over, you sort of just see the pieces coming together. There's also pretty clear the heating and the cooling, I should say, on the left and the right-hand sides. Those are, I think, where the exhaust is. So the hot air will come out of those left and right-hand sides. The air is sucked up from the bottom. When you open up the laptop, you pretty immediately see the ethos of this thing, right? It is made for you to put it together. So you see the mouse pad and you see where the keyboard and stuff goes immediately. You look at it, right? Like the bezel's not even on yet. You can change the color of the bezel. Like everything just seems so customizable. So now let's actually take this thing apart and let's put in all that internal hardware. So it's really easy. You just sort of take out these 2 tabs on the left and right hand side, and then you can take out the spacers, just slide them off. It's all magnetic. There's pins that it connects to, so everything's very easy. And you can see here some of those pins on the bottom of the mouse pad, which I literally just slid off just like that. Next, you have to remove the mid-plate connector, so how that connects like to the motherboard, I want to say, from the mid-plate. And then you have to unscrew a bunch of screws. There's 16 screws, and so fast forwarding through that took me a little while. What's nice about these screws is that they're magnetized, so you don't lose them, you just have to loosen them. So love that. And then you can just kind of take off the mid plate when you're done. So here I am just doing the final touches, making sure, checking, rechecking, and eventually you'll see I kind of figured it out and I loosened them all up properly. I had to really double and triple check because it was a little stuck at first. So eventually I realized, okay, I just have to give it a little bit of pressure, and there you go. I was able to take it off. And look at that. Look how beautiful that is. How amazing that is. All right, now I'm gonna put in the storage. So I started with the secondary storage. It's the 500 gig NVMe M.2, and I took out the small screw and I basically just put it in at a slant. You'll see here just shortly. I put it in at a bit of a slant and I'm able to screw it back in, but it took me a couple attempts and I did not cut them all out because that's life. So here you can see, I thought I had it in, didn't work, go in again for a second run, got it in, slanted, which is great, and then I'm able to screw it back in. It was a pretty seamless process. Next is for the larger storage, my primary storage, which is that 2 terabyte NVMe M.2, and here you can see, go ahead, put that in at a slant, screw that in, looks good. And then finally, I just had to put in my RAM. And so I have two 32 gig DDR5 RAM modules, memory modules, and I had to figure out how to put them in. It's been a while, but you basically just put them in at a slant, and there you are. There you have it. Pretty fun. There's a little metal rod that clips them in securely, and there it is in all its glory. All right, all done. Now we just have to put it back together, kind of. So I go ahead and take the mid plate here and I reattach that mid plate connector. And then there are those 16 screws that you have to go and screw back in. Thank God that they are magnetized, so you don't have to worry about getting them back in position. You kind of just go to each one and go ahead and screw them back on. Want to make sure for sure that they're tight because I don't want anything loose rattling in there. But after that, it was pretty simple. Just put the keyboard back in. And this is amazing, right? This is why this laptop is so special. You could just put the keyboard back in. I kind of struggled with it at first, but it is quite easy with the magnets as well. And then what I was just showing is those color shifters. And these color shifters are really cool. And so essentially these are the spacers, and I had a bunch of different spacers, and I'll show the different configurations, but you just quickly slide in those spacers on the left and the right as well. And then you essentially have a configurable sort of aesthetic, which is really cool. I put that one on upside down at first, so I have to flip it around, put it back on. But here you can see, right, keyboard in the middle, left spacer, right spacer, looks great. And now all I have to do is put back the mouse pad, clicks into place pretty quickly. And then I'm putting back on for now those original gray spacers. Something I do want to call out is that because it's so modular, I did notice on the left spacer, it wasn't quite going in at first. And you can see that here, I'm starting to play around, like taking each side, trying to see what's going to fit better. But kind of turns out that there just is a bit of a gap on the left spacer. And I've seen a lot of reports of people facing similar issues with some of those gaps and stuff. It makes sense because it's so modular. For mine, it's very, very minute. It doesn't bug me that much, but it is expensive. So I do hope to see that improve in the future for sure. After I turned it on, I decided to get a bit of a closer look for you all. So here you can see the gap. It's really small, but look how cool the computer looks. All right, now it's time to put on the bezel, which was quite simple. It just requires taking the bezel and essentially sticking it on the outline of the display. And there's these magnets that make it quite simple to just use your fingers and clip them in and make sure they're in there. But this would mean that I could change the color of the bezel if I ever wanted, which is pretty awesome. All right, so in order to get the computer powered on, I had to charge it. And in order to do that, I got to take out one of the I/O modules, in this case, a USB-C module. I really like this part of the computer. It's probably my favorite thing about this computer is how configurable those input-output modules are. I use a lot of different devices and peripherals, and being able to have that flexibility is amazing. Didn't get a good look at me inserting the module in here, but here you can see the end result. With those 2 other free IOs, I can put anything else I want in there. So after I got the laptop plugged in, it was time to turn it on. It did say it would take about 30 seconds for the RAM modules to get set up. However, I did notice for me it took about 1.5 minutes, and so I fast forwarded through this portion. I was waiting, pretty impatient, kind of worried that something wasn't set up right. And here you can see on the screen that in fact I didn't actually attach the mid-plate connector properly. So I had to take apart the computer and put it back together, but it's very simple because I just had to slide off the keyboard module and reconnect the mid-plate connector. I was able to pretty quickly fix that issue. The mid-plate connector was sort of loose. I just had to make sure to clip it in properly. And here it actually worked now. You can see the RGB keyboard, which looks so awesome going off. And now you can see default boot device is missing, which makes sense because I haven't actually gotten any boot drive on here ready on the SSDs. So I had to go ahead and do that. And so the way that I was able to do that is with these awesome input modules. So the USB-A input module I just put that into the computer, and then I was able to take my USB drive and actually just plug that in and get started installing Windows on this machine. I love these I/O modules so much. They're so cool. Just like that, I'm able to take my USB stick, put it in the USB-A slot, and I have a Windows ISO on this USB. Should be able to just boot normally with that. So after turning on the machine, you're going to see the RGBs kick in again. I think they're so cool. And then I basically just go through the traditional Windows OS setup process. At this point, my first impressions of the machine are super high. I've already realized why I love those I/O modularity. I love the color shifters, the way that they reflect light. The metal design is very sleek. The setup has been very smooth, and at this point I'm just going through the Windows 11 out-of-box experience. Now what you'll notice is here I had a Wi-Fi driver issue, but fortunately because of that modularity, I have an Ethernet module. I can just plug that in and then directly Ethernet into the internet, so I don't have to worry about being able to set up and how I would do that if the Wi-Fi driver weren't working and I didn't have the option to have an Ethernet module, which is not something that I think I traditionally want to have all the time on my machine. It's more of an optional thing, which I really enjoy. Because of that modularity, I'm just connected now with my Ethernet, plugged it in, and I was able to get set up. Then I was able to actually update the drivers from Framework. They have a really easy way to just grab the bundle, put it on the USB stick, update the drivers, and in doing that right afterwards, my Wi-Fi was just connected and I was able to go back to wireless, and now I can remove the Ethernet cable or the Ethernet module because I don't really need it anymore. Now I just need to make sure that everything is set up properly. So I go into Task Manager and I just make sure that the CPU is showing up like it's supposed to, 64 gigs of RAM, both of my SSDs, the Wi-Fi driver seems to be working, and I see the GPU, which is pretty sweet. So it looks like we're all set up here. So the configurations are what make this laptop very cool. And so I'm going to show a few clips of me actually putting together the different configurations. Here's the RGB macropad. Essentially, each configuration you can put together, you pull the two tabs at the bottom of the laptop, and you can remove the trackpad. Then each module has its own black pull tab, which makes it really easy to just slide them off. And then each module is also magnetized, so sliding them back in is quite simple. And so you'll see here that I've opted for the RGB macropad at the top right, the keyboard at the top left, and the trackpad to be center aligned. But it's really easy to just change the configuration with whatever pieces you get from Framework. And so here I also have a numpad, and I'm going to put together that numpad, but I'm going to put the numpad on the left-hand side, and I'm also going to make sure that the mouse is right aligned at the bottom. All right, the last configuration I'm going to show is the one with the LED matrix spacers to the left of the keyboard, and the trackpad is going to be center aligned. So that's all I got for this one. Thank you all so much for watching, and I hope you enjoyed.